Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. I'm really excited to be back at this today. I've got a fantastic guest on. After doing nearly 100 of these things, I was just telling Michael that you kind of have a good feel of how the conversation will go and how it will flow. And I can certainly let everyone know that this will be a real special treat. Michael has got some very unique experience in so much that a lot of the guests that have been on don't have necessarily. And so I think he'll be able to speak from a couple of different positions as a peer coach, as an owner of a company, and then being heavily involved in the association there in Texas. So thanks everybody for tuning in. This episode, as they all are, and as you know by now, it's brought to you by my company, Pest Control. We're growing. 2023 has started out with a bang. We're hoping to be able to continue to grow and break records that we set last year. Part of the way that we've had some of this growth has been all the traditional ways and investing in pay-per-click and local service ads and doing mailers and a variety of different things. But we've also found a niche that kind of serves companies that are in between the $500,000 to $10 million range that have, I don't want to say had enough, but they're just looking to close the chapter on pest and open up another chapter on the beach or on the golf course a little bit more. And so if that is you and you own a pest control company in any of the markets that we operate in, and you're looking to learn what the next chapter of your life may look like and what your company may be valued at, we would certainly love to have some of those conversations. The last 4 or 5 years, we've probably done north of 20 deals or so. And so we are learning a little bit with each one. But I'd love to have those conversations with you if you would like to as well. You can reach out to me directly on my cell. You can call or text. It's 480-254-9730, or you can email me directly at aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. I've got Michael Bosco here. He owns and operates SafeHaven Pest Control out of Dallas, Texas. Super competitive market, tons of bugs there, lots of just a real strong economy and a real great place to operate any company, not just a home service space company, but any company really. He also, when he's not doing that, he serves as the president of the Texas Pest Control Association. Busy, thankless job. And there's just so much that goes into making one of those things run and go behind the scenes. And so he is working in behalf of every PCO in Texas, whether you know that or not, and making good, positive things happen for you. So when you see him or shake hands, make sure you pick up his bill or his meal. And then Michael, he's also an executive coach with McFarlin Stanford, and he facilitates peer groups, and he's done that for the last little while as well. And I know as we were getting to know each other, Michael, that you feel very strongly that is one of the most important activities that any business owner, pest, home service space, whatever, could spend once a month or once a week or whatever those platforms look like. So Michael Bosco, everybody, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, Austin. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, this will be great. Well, tell us a little, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself. We talked about overnight successes and how they all take 20 years. And what I mean by that is you didn't just today become the president of the Texas Association Board. You didn't just today found your successful pest control company. You didn't just today start working with all these peer groups. And so maybe rewind 5 or 10 or 15 years and let us know a little bit about your start and your background.
Yep. So I've been doing this. I've been in the pest control industry since I could crawl, right? Third generation. So great uncle started the business in 1955 actually. And then my parents took over in the 70s. So our Texas Pest Control license number was number 30. So we were the 30th company in the state of Texas to be licensed to perform pest control. So we go back quite a while with some pretty good roots. So I grew up with basically a family pest control business being ran out of the house, right? So I think just from the time I was 12 years old up. Dad had me crawling in under houses and crawl spaces and attics. And what I tell guys today when I'm doing interviews is, listen, there's nothing that I'm going to ask you to do that I haven't done. So I've done it all.
And I did it as a 15-year-old, so don't complain with me about,
Well, in fact, the story I like to tell is the day I turned 16, I went and took my driver's test that morning, came home, had lunch, jumped in a truck and ran a route. So
there you go.
Yeah, I have been doing it a while. So, and then went off to college, and I was going to get my entomology degree, but actually really kind of found myself in the agronomy department, loving soil science. And so I ended up with a soil science degree. And so by the time I actually graduated, I decided I wanted to jump into lawn fertility, plant healthcare. So graduated and jumped back into the family pest control business because I needed to earn a dollar and make some money. But I used the client base to build a lawn fertility program company. It's called Soils Alive. And I grew it up until I jumped out of the pest control in about 2000. So it took me about 2-3 years to get it up and running to where I could go full-time. Soils Alive. Grew it for the 15 years and then sold it in 2013. Texas had gone through some droughts and it kind of scared me a little bit. It's
I bet.
It's one thing, to be doing fertilization, weed control, and all of a sudden when half the Metroplex can't water but once a month, you're like, wait a minute, my company has no value today.
Yeah.
Right? So when we came out of the drought, I decided to go ahead and sell it. And the timing was good. That allowed me to jump back into the family pest control business because my parents were getting to the point where they were ready to retire. And that actually was a fantastic deal because I left, I went on my own. I made a lot of mistakes, but organically kind of grew that business and learned how to be a business owner. So by the time I came back into the family business, I had made enough mistakes to where, I really kind of knew what I wanted to do with the pest control business. So jumped back in. And at the time when I purchased it from my parents, it was about a $500,000 company. And so here today, a few years later, we've grown it a little bit and doing well. So that's really kind of how I've ended up where I am today, at least as a pest control owner. And along the way, Dad would drag me to the local Greater Dallas Pest Control Association meetings and got me involved in the association or understanding what the association did and watched it do what the associations do. And eventually, when I came back into the pest control industry in 2015, I started getting involved at the local level. And after a couple of years, it didn't take long before I sat on the state board and, here I am. At some point somebody says, we need you to be the secretary. I'm like, okay. And then, next year you're the treasurer and then you're the vice president. And here I am. Now I'm president of the Texas Pest Control Association. So love the association, doing some great things. And, and I don't know if you want me to keep on going, but then, peer groups is another thing I'd love to talk about, right?
And as it relates to the association, it sounds like you could run, but you can't hide. You're always doing something every year, no matter what. But yeah, no, please go into the peer groups.
Well, so then peer groups, because of my green industry landscape experience, McFarlin Stanford asked me to come and kind of get involved with some landscape peer groups, because a number of their peer groups members were they were pest control curious, or they were starting to figure out how to get in. And so anyway, I watched how the peer group operated, and I was like, holy crap, that's like the most powerful 8 hours of business I've ever watched. And so I was like, the pest control industry needs this. And so I ended up jumping in, becoming an executive coach, being part of 2 landscape peer groups. Each peer group has about 12 members in it, companies in it. And then this about 12 months ago, we started getting the pest control peer group up and running. And today we've got our first pest control peer group up and running. So McFarlin Stanford's got, I think that makes 13 peer groups. I think we'll have another 3 more rolled out in the next 3 months. So they really have a great model for peer groups, successful business owners. And as you and I were talking earlier about business owners, being in a room with 12 other owners or 11 other owners, and it's kind of like your own board of directors, right? Like they hold you accountable. They know your numbers. They get, your challenges, but nobody in your own organization really holds you accountable the way you need to be held
Sure.
accountable. No matter how much you ask for input from your team, at the end of the day, they know you cut the check, right?
And I think there's a lot of reasons for that too. Maybe employees don't have all the information that you have, or maybe not like fear, but like you said, you cut the check, right? And there's maybe different levels of comfort of providing that type of critical feedback. I have tons of questions already, just in the little bit that you've been sharing, but you called it the most powerful 8 hours that maybe a business owner could spend. And you've talked a little bit about as to why, but why did you call it that? I mean, what is, not the elevator pitch, but what is a core thing or two that you see coming out of these peer groups, that you're able to sit in on and maybe facilitate too?
I think part of the recipe where, why I say that is we do a site visit. So you're inviting the other business owners to come in, see your operation, not just from a tour level, but to really talk to your team members. And with you not even in the room, right? Like we're basically asking questions. There's some of it's pre-prepared questions and answers on different levels of what they do, what their responsibilities are, how they fall in the organizational chart, who do they report to, those sort of structural things. And then we start asking more questions and diving in and try to find out where their pain points are, where they're struggling at. And then after you've talked to a number of that business's leadership and their sales team and maybe the support team's leader, and you start to see the patterns and you start to understand where the company is struggling. So then after we've gone through the tour and interview of all of these leaders within their organization, then we sit down back at the hotel and we go through a whole process of start what you should start doing, what you need to stop doing, what you need to keep doing. And it's powerful, right? Like for the most part, we as business owners kind of know where we struggle. But sometimes we hadn't dealt with those issues. Sometimes we're not aware. Sometimes, they just have great ideas of things that they've tried that they've had success with. So that whole process is a majority of a day, and it's again, like I said, it's the most powerful 6, 7, 8 hours of business I've ever watched happen. And that business owner and everybody involved walks away with some fantastic action items that need to be taken.
So I feel like I'm going to dominate the mostly talk about these peer groups because I'm just so interested. There's a lot of different types of peer groups that are out there, and I know that there's a lot of different types of, there's entrepreneurs organization, and there's Vistage, and there's niche groups like you're putting together, but perhaps is all pest control owners or pest control CEs or COOs or CEOs. Is there like a certain, like, do you subscribe to a certain, not like ideology, but, do you draw some of, where does the inspiration for your groups come from? Like there's certainly a process and you probably have an agenda. Did you create that, or did you borrow it, or is it part of something that's bigger? I'm curious.
That's really part of what McFarlin Stanford has created over the years, doing peer groups within the landscape industry. So they've been at it for many years, and they've just taken that and changed it, and modified it, and to where they've got a really an agenda, or for basically for a 3-day visit that works extremely well. So I can't take the credit for how well that agenda works, but it has translated from within the landscape industry into the pest control industry extremely well. So yeah, that's where that came from. I think, to answer your question, is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I just wondered because I did Vistage for a year or two. I hear a lot of great things from EO, and so I just wonder. So that's great. You said a lot of people take a lot of different things away. You guys do site tours. You guys get together once a month or once a quarter?
We physically get together once a quarter at each other's operations, and then once a month we have accountability calls where we get on and we really kind of go back to, all right, at the last meeting you had a couple of takeaways. How are you coming on those? So it's our way of making the accountability work.
That's great. I also wondered too, like, could you share maybe like a big aha moment that either you or someone that was part of this group had, like a real big win or a real big, success story? One of the things I thought of myself when you said it, and sometimes owners don't know where they're struggling. I'm like, that could probably be me. It's just like oblivious to the thing, but maybe share a success story that has come from one of these conversations or groups.
Here's probably one that I think is one of the most dramatic that I've seen. So there's a number of things that we do. We read a book prior to going into the site visit, and that's 1 hour is talking about that book. And then we do some other things as well. At one of our groups that we met a couple of months ago, we read the book Motive, Patrick Lencioni book, right? And it talks about, is this really, being an owner, being president, being CEO, is that really what you wanted to do, right? And why did you want to be CEO? Like, you may have gotten into pest control because you love pest control and you love working with clients, but the reality is, as we grow our operations, you get farther and farther away from what you probably loved about the industry, right? We now are owners, and now we're dealing with payroll, and we're dealing with HR issues, and we're dealing with legal issues. And like, is that what you love doing?
Yeah.
Right. Well, one of my owners in the landscape peer group, we read that book, and it made such an impact on him. He actually promoted his COO to become CEO, and he stepped down to get back out into the field. So he literally demoted himself so that he could go do what he loved to do. Right. And
I love that. I'm definitely familiar with Patrick Lencioni's work and have read a few of his books. I've never read that one, but I never really thought about it the way that you just described it, right? What did you get into your industry or your business or start your business to do? And if you fast forward just 5 years from that point or 10 years from that point, chances are really good you're almost doing nothing. It's all the stuff that you said that I did not get into business for: HR, car accidents, insurance renewals. I'm just thinking of things that happened to me this morning. You know what I mean?
Exactly. The fires that we put out, right?
Yeah. And it's like, wait a second, what did I just do for the last 2 years of my life or 3 years of my of my life? I like that. I'm going to demote myself right after this call. I'm excited. Well, that's a great one. Anything, I mean, we could talk about this forever, but like anything else that comes of those groups, like, do you have a personal favorite thing that, comes from some of those meetings or some of those accountability calls?
I think organizational chart and responsibilities and who reports to who tends to be the one that doesn't get dealt with and tends to be the clear issue that most operations need to solve. I mean, a lot of operations out there may like, no, that's not our problem. And and we actually had a peer group come to our operation, and that was one of their inputs was there's some like who actually reports to who, and it gets a little, because I do have a partner and he and I kind of share in some of the responsibilities. And so this clear line of where am I supposed to go? Like, who do I actually answer to becomes very fuzzy at times, where we as owners, a lot of times, like, no, I mean, this is clear. Everybody knows what they should be doing, right? But I see it over and over again that a lot of operations don't have clear organizational charts, and people don't know who they're actually supposed to report to, or they're reporting to multiple people. So who really am I, supposed to be taking orders from? So, the bigger the organization, I think the more complicated that gets.
What size of organizations are you Are you around the $500,000 range, 10 million? Is it all?
Usually once you get over $1 million, I'd say the $1 million to $5 million is when you start, because as you're building an organization, you're just bringing people in, right? Like, oh yeah, we have a need here, so let's hire that person. Okay, well, great. And you give them tasks to do. And you just keep doing that because you have things that need to get accomplished. You have tasks that need to get done. You hire somebody and they're doing those tasks. But then sometimes you don't step back and go, okay, from an organizational structure point of view, how is all this flowing? Who's reporting to who? Who's ultimately responsible for that task? And this is embarrassingly shocking, but we let somebody go about a year ago in our organization who was solely responsible for making sure that the schedule stayed efficient. And we do dynamic routing, so our scheduling becomes a little bit more complicated than a company that might do just regular traditional routes. Well, we let that individual go, and the reality was nobody really stepped in to become solely responsible for routing. It became like, oh, everybody's responsible for routing. Well, as we know, if everybody's responsible for routing,
no one.
So we really just, it took us, unfortunately, way too long to realize we don't have one individual that is solely responsible at looking at the schedule and making sure that the technicians' routes are as efficient as they need to be or as full as they need to be. Like, why did it take us so long to figure that out, right? So that goes back to the whole organizational chart, whose responsibilities are what, and knowing when somebody leaves that responsibility, somebody needs to step back into that role, right?
So you've worked with a lot of different companies, a lot of different sizes. You've been doing this for a little while. What are some of the challenges that Michael, without even shaking the guy or gal's hand or walking into their shop at a $5 million mark type company? What are some of the issues that they're probably having if they've not hired a coach before or a business consultant before? I mean, and where you're looking maybe to provide value or critical feedback that could help move their company forward. I mean, are there things that you just know that might be off or need to be adjusted from hello?
Yeah, absolutely. Because every owner has their playground that they like to play in, their sandbox, right? Some owners are just fantastic at marketing. Some are fantastic at just people and, just their people skills are great, or they're selling. A lot of owners are great salesmen, and that's where they started. They built their business being a salesman. So what I see is there's usually not individual scorecards, job scorecards for each person. So a lot of their roles in the business are not clearly laid out. Like their employees, their team members don't know where are they winning, where are they losing. What did a successful day look like for a CSR, right? Like, it's one thing for a technician, like, here's your route, go run your route, you complete that route, success, right? It's a little more clear. But when you start moving into the other roles, and maybe it's your COO, maybe it's a CSR, maybe it's the director of support, those roles become, a lot of times they just act as firemen, right? Like, they're going to put out whatever fire needs to be put out that day. Like what you brought up earlier, like, okay, well, I had to run and take care of insurance. We had a little drama. We had a couple of people out. So maybe even had to go run a route, or, they're just plugging the holes in the dam. They're not looking down the road far enough to solve. They're not going upstream far enough to solve the problems before they become problems, right? If the reality is, the more bored you are, probably the more efficient your operation is, the more strategic you've been, the more planning you've been. You've laid out everybody's their roles. They know what their responsibilities are. So I would say that's typically where there's really a lot of work that needs to be done as an operation moves from the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million operation, because the reality is most of us don't come from a corporate world where we know management. We don't have MBA backgrounds. We don't think in corporate structure, organizational charts, and job cards or scorecards and responsibilities and all of that. So
yeah, we think about getting in a truck, taking care of a customer, answering a phone call, giving bids, I mean, just all of that. No, this has been, unfortunately, our time is coming short, but this has been fantastic. And we have to have a part 2 and a part 3. As we start to round this out, Michael, what would, like, someone that's on the fence about joining a peer group, or maybe they did it and didn't have a great experience, or maybe they think, oh, I can't afford that, or I'm not going to afford that because it's $1,000 a month or $500 a month or something. What would you tell someone that's considering that, or kind of on the edge of doing it or not doing it? I think I know the answer, but
sure.
And then why?
Yeah, I can't speak. I know that there's several different peer group options out there within our industry. But speaking from personal experience, what we do is twice a year, we do what we call a discovery, where for, like $1,600 or so, a very reasonable price, come in, spend 3 days going through a mock peer group. So every single person that walks in that room, we're going to walk you through what the agenda of what a peer group would look like over those 3 days. We start, and the 3 days means you fly in the morning. We start at 3:00. And then we're going to roll to about 5 o'clock or so. Then we're going to go to dinner and have social hour and get to know each other. Then the next day, we're going to do the whole site visit, and we're going to go through that process and see what that looked like. And then dinner, more social time, more interacting. And then the next morning, we're going to wrap up around 11 o'clock that next morning so that you can get on a plane and get home. So it's 2 nights away, right? I mean, we all have families. We all have responsibilities back home. 2 nights away, you're in, you're out, and you're on your way. And that 3 days will give you an idea of, like, okay, yes, this is for me, or no, it's not, or I like this group, or I didn't like this group. I haven't made a commitment. I haven't signed up for something that I don't even know what I'm in for, right? So we do that discovery, and it's a great opportunity for them to discover, is it for them or not?
No, I love that there's a period of kind of either testing it out or observation, or kind of that initial analysis to see if you jive, and it would be a good thing. I have really, really enjoyed this conversation, Michael. Thank you so much for your time. If there's those that have been listening that want to continue the conversation with you offline, what is the best way for them? Are you active on LinkedIn? Is email your thing? How do people get in touch with you?
All the above. Certainly LinkedIn. I'm fairly responsive. They can email me. My email address at SafeHaven is Michael, MICHAEL at SafeHavenPest.com. If they want to go check out McFarlin Stanford, they can go check out McFarlinStanford.com and kind of look at see it. It's going to be pretty green industry dominating, but we got our peer groups and we've got our system and it works. And we've got a great group there to start with. So yeah, I try to be as available as possible. And Pest Expo, we hadn't even talked about Pest Expo. So if they go to pestexpo.com, my information is at the bottom of the Pest Expo page, so they can get my cell phone right there.
No, I love that. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending it with me and my audience. Thank you for all of you that tune in each and every week and that like and share and all of that sort of thing. It's been really fun and really rewarding to be able to have excellent guests on, such as Michael, to be able to share some of the experience and ups and downs, frankly, because it's not all pretty. It's not all good. I think everyone's got their background and experience and successes and failures and stripes. And so it's really great to be able to learn from one another. These are dropping every week. And until the next one, create a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.